As Chinese artillery closed in on Lhasa, a 23-year-old Dalai Lama vanished into Himalayas. He crossed frozen passes, barren plateaus and the forested gorges before Indian troops pulled him to safety. 3 years later, China and India went to war. This is the story of the thrilling escape that changed Asia forever. The 14th Dalai Lama was only 15 years old when the Chinese invasion began in 1950. The slow consolidation of Tibet gained momentum, and by early 1959, armed uprisings were breaking out across Tibet. The fuse started burning towards an explosion. The Chinese intelligence reported back that Dalai Lama, the absolute authority of the nation, might escape from the clutches of the Chinese military. Chairman Mao ordered that Dalai Lama should be arrested. The Chinese military surrounded Lhasa and ordered Dalai to come to Chinese barracks without any bodyguards. As news of this leaked, large crowds surrounded the Norbulinka palace. The Tibetan government and common people refused to send the Dalai Lama. At this moment of great uncertainty, it was customary to consult the Tibetan state oracle, a very exalted position in the Tibetan spiritual order. Dalai consulted thrice with the oracle. The first 2 times the oracle suggested that Dalai should stay back and negotiate with the Chinese. But on the 3rd time, the oracle urged that Dalai should flee that very night. Coincidence or divinity, but right after this prophecy, the Chinese started shelling the gardens of the Norbulinka palace. This was the sign. As Dalai agreed to escape, the oracle wrote a detailed path which Dalai should follow until he reached the last Tibetan village at the Indian border. The same night, disguised in a uniform of a Tibetan soldier and carrying a gun which he had no clue how to use, Dalai left the Norbulinka palace. He was made a part of a company of 20 other disguised people who were either his closest family members or ministers in his government. For few tense moments, the Chinese army observed Dalai's group as they crossed through the crowds in front of the Norbulinka palace and went to the Kyushu river. Luckily, the Chinese did not recognize them. Here at the banks of the Kyushu, they were joined by a larger entourage. They crossed the river and halted at Shimfu. Next day onwards, Dalai's entourage was escorted by the Khampa resistance fighters. The group now switched to horseback and swiftly rode southwards to the foot of the Chela Pass. They crossed the Chela Pass and soon reached the banks of a mighty river. This was the mythical waters of the Yarlang Sangpo, the life vein of the Tibetan civilization. Tibetans believe that the great Yarlang Sangpo carries the blessings of Avalokiteshvara himself, the protector of Tibet. After originating near Mount Kailash, the Yarlang Sangpo travels roughly 1700 kilometers through the mystic lands of Tibet and then takes a dramatic U-turn at the Great Bend before entering India, where it becomes the mighty Brahmaputra, the son of Brahma, the creator of this universe. Dalai, along with his entourage, now crossed the mighty Brahmaputra on a ferry and took refuge in a monastery. Here they debated whether to take the shortest route through Bhutan, but the problem was that the Bhutan route would surely be guarded by the Chinese army. After much deliberation, they decided on a longer and more arduous route through the frozen glaciers and high mountain passes. And now began their 15-day journey towards the Indian border. They traversed vast mountains, barren plateaus, rigid glaciers, icy winds which at times reached gale speed, and hostile sub-zero temperatures. They mostly hid at day and traveled by night, sometimes camping in faraway mountain corners, sometimes in monasteries, and sometimes amongst the wild nomadic Khampa tribes. Dalai quietly rode, a silent, dignified, just out of teen monk, carrying the hopes of an entire nation and its ancient people. Finally, on 27th of March 1959, they reached Kenzimane, the last Tibetan village at the border of India. From Kenzimane, Dalai sent a letter to the Indian Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru, explaining the political situation in Tibet and requesting asylum in India. As Dalai waited for official Indian permission to cross the border, Chairman Mao has already authorized full military suppression of the Tibetan uprising. Orders from Beijing were to eliminate all resistance and secure Lhasa. PLA has intensified search of all monastery complexes, arrested every suspected rebels, seized huge weapons cache, tightened every road checkpoint, and even started aerial reconnaissance. But crucially, Mao did not yet know that Dalai had taken an impossible southeastern route and reached the Indian borders. On receiving the diplomatic request from Dalai, Pandit Nehru moved decisively. New Delhi immediately issued classified orders. A detachment of Assam Rifles was rushed to Kenzibane. Field officers were instructed to receive Dalai's party discreetly, provide medical aid, and escort them deep into India's territory. 4 days after reaching Kenzimane on 31st of March 1959, the 14th Dalai Lama was escorted by Indian soldiers into Indian territory. Behind lay a conquered capital. Ahead lay exile in a foreign land. Successful extraction messages immediately went out to New Delhi, and the same evening, Prime Minister Nehru stood up in the parliament and informed the House that Dalai Lama has entered India and would be treated with dignity and respect. His announcement was carefully calibrated as a humanitarian statement and had no grand speeches about China or declarations about Tibet. But everyone in the parliament understood what had happened. India had just accepted the world's most famous refugee. Mao, in faraway Beijing, was immediately informed of Dalai's escape to India. Mao was furious, his anger was frightful, and retribution even more terrible. With India, Mao shed the last bit of restraint and ordered his military to prepare for a war. 3 years from then, in 1962, as the world was distracted with a nuclear showdown between America and Russia, Mao took his opportunity to strike. China was at war with India.